Hi everyone, welcome to this edition of the office hours for JenkinsX. Today, Daniel Giordano is going to be speaking about a community forum that we're building for the community to ask questions in. It will be searchable so that you can look back at other problems people have had and the answers that they came up with. It'll be more accessible than conversations that are currently being done in Slack, but I will let Daniel speak more about this initiative. Also, Dave Conde will talk about some of the work that they're doing. And I'll speak briefly about GSoC and how the timelines for GSoC have shifted for students and how the time that the organization takes to review student proposals has moved a little bit further along. And that's something that's been done by the Google Summer of Code people. But we are really happy with the proposals that we've had for JenkinsX, and we're really happy that students have engaged with our projects, and we're very excited to run the program. Daniel, would you like to start talking about the forum?
Yeah, sure. That's fine. All right. So currently, I think today discussion on the JenkinsX project in general, it happens in a few different places that you can go to interact with not only this team, but other, I think, members of the community. There's the Kubernetes Slack, we have Stack Overflow, there's the GitHub issue board that's on the project itself. There's a lot more Medium articles getting written and a lot of comments and discussion happening there. So we thought it would be a good idea to kind of formalize this and build an official community on the JenkinsX website. So the link you saw today is just kind of our first trial run that'll move to the JenkinsX open source website. But it is a discourse community that's focused on discussion and collaboration around topics in JenkinsX that really are much more asynchronous than, let's say, Slack allows us today. So today, if you have a question or even a problem, you might come into Kubernetes Slack and get into a really detailed discussion with an engineer at 2 a.m., maybe Eastern time. And that discussion, while great and productive for that one person, it's hard for anyone else in the community to then see that. So we really want to bring a more searchable, like Kara said, and a more asynchronous kind of workflow and project here. And we're going to go with, I think, discourse as that home. So again, it'll be on community.jenkinsx.io. And it will really be for discussion, Q&A, and a triage. So we've also, instead of just pushing this out there and having yet another place for everything to go and hop skipping through each one, we do kind of have a workflow and a triage system for discussion. So Slack will continue to be for generally, hopefully, for news, announcements, communicating short bits and out to the community. And then discourse is really where problems are supposed to be solved, questions are supposed to be answered. And if that solution does require a larger change to the project itself, a bug has to be, let's say, filed, then it will progress to GitHub issues. So we'll be completely transparent in that way, where you can see the conversation happening on discourse and in the community. And then we'll link directly at the bottom of that back and forth that we have with multiple people. If, again, a change does need to happen, we'll link directly to that GitHub issue board and people can follow along. So that's basically it. We've been formulating this for a couple of weeks now. If anyone has comments, concerns, or would like to be involved, let me know now, and then we'll continue this as we build it out. And then, yeah, what Kara's showing now is actually just, I took like the top 12 questions from Stack Overflow, and I just started to port it over to this.
Daniel, I personally love discourse. I think it's a sane thing to use, and you can use labels and things like that. I'm just wondering, is there a way to, for example, if a conversation on Slack is getting deeper, or we want to somehow make this conversation persistent, to use automation and move the conversation directly from Slack to discourse?
There probably is a way. I'm sure if they have a Slack bot or if it's open, I'm not really sure on the Kubernetes Slack, we could probably do that. definitely have to be keen. Yeah, we can make a Slack bot, right? Anytime it comes up to move a conversation past, like, let's say 15 replies or something. And we'll automate a link and say, hey, could you have this conversation on the discourse channel? That would be an awesome idea. But definitely we have to be a little bit good about triaging that and kind of pushing people nicely over to discourse to have that longer conversation. Because to your point, it'll just happen where people start getting a long conversation, and it's not jarring to switch, but we definitely have to, again, I think it's good community practice, right, to put it in a more transparent place. We talked a little bit yesterday. If one person has the question and they ask it in the Kubernetes Slack, which is pretty locked down for like a general, just everyday user, there's got to be 3, 4, 5 other people thinking it that have Googled it and didn't find it. So I think if we push that on the community, that is just more open, hopefully we can get out of having that in Slack, and we'll try to automate it as best as we can. I'm trying to think now what we could do with the Slack bot or Zapier.
That's great, Daniel. We definitely
implement that.
want more community participation and asking questions and answering each other's questions. Does anyone else have any questions or comments on this?
All right, sweet. I will send over the Confluence as well, actually, in this channel. I just have to type it out completely in the little chat on my phone, so I'll do that now.
Yes, and also we'll be making a GitHub issue on the JenkinsX docs repo so that it's open to everyone in the community. To kind of give feedback on the proposal, and so you can make any additional suggestions if there are things you would like to see in the forum. Awesome. Dave, do you want to talk about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
Daniel, can you just unshare your screen there for 1 sec?
It's actually me. I've been sharing it. I've paused sharing. How do I? Sorry. No. So my sharing is pause, stop share. Okay, perfect.
There we go. Okay. So one of the things the team has been working on is we're looking at splitting out cloud resource creation from boot. And the thinking being that you should be able to get a system administrator to be able to set up the cloud resources for you beforehand, because in some companies there's like permission differences and stuff like that, and things can be locked down a bit more. So what we're doing is we're working on enabling cloud resource creation via Terraform, so that will set up all of the resources that you need to have up front. And then JX boot can be run against the cluster that's created with all of the correct resources after they've been set up. So in the blog post that went out there on the 25th of March, there's a couple of links in here that link off to the repositories. So it's still a bit of a work in progress, but we're hoping to have that all the loose ends tied up within the next 2 weeks. So there's one here for GKE. And if people want to go in and try it out, there's instructions there on how to use it and everything. And what we'll be able to do is like do a full demo of it in 2 weeks' time. There's another one for PKS. There's documentation being done up on the JenkinsX IO site as well to complement it. So we're changing the install flows around a little bit so that it takes this into consideration. So that's part of the work that was mentioned earlier that Hardy's been working on in collaboration with John. And this contains all the things like storage buckets, how to set up Vault, what you need for external DNS to be set up correctly, so all of the service accounts that are needed, service accounts for Cert Manager, And then there's a list there of all of the different parameters that you can supply. And we've also been working alongside Microsoft, who are contributing a module that can be used for Azure. So like the Azure support is currently in the works, but it's still a bit young right now. So that's it. Is that we should have a bit more of a demo in 2 weeks' time. And the other thing that the team are currently looking at, which is early days as well, is OpenShift support. But it's still a bit of an initial investigation around permissions and things like that we're currently looking into. So yeah, that's all we have for today. Did anybody have any questions on anything that you'd like to ask any of the team members while we're here?
I had a question about the Terraform stuff. So I've also been using Terraform for something totally unrelated to JenkinsX recently. And I was actually trying to, I mean, I really like Terraform. I think it's a very, very good solution for what it does. I've been really impressed by it. But I was really interested because I actually was trying to go a bit further than just provisioning the cloud infrastructure, and was actually using it to provision the cluster as well. So, for example, what I was installing, there's no, so JX Boot, for example, will install, well, JenkinsX doesn't really use Helm with Tiller anymore, but this, for example, this project was still using just real Helm 2. So you need to install Helm. So one of the tasks that you have to do is to create the service account for Helm in the cluster and create the role binding. You also need to create namespaces because Helm doesn't really create namespaces for you. You kind of need to do that. So I was actually using Terraform to do all of that, and then so using the Kubernetes provider, and then also using the Helm provider to actually install charts into the cluster. I mean, I was wondering if you guys thought at all about whether it makes sense to allow Terraform to go further than just providing the cloud resources, and also doing more orchestration of the of what goes into the cluster.
Yeah, so we've kind of bounced around a few ideas around having quick starts that would be available to enable you to provision some infrastructure using Terraform.
Yep.
It's not something we've gone into in a huge amount of detail yet, but it's definitely something that we'd be interested in looking at if users thought it would be useful. It could be something that could be used for preview environments, or testing environments for spinning stuff up. I think it would be very powerful.
I don't know, to me that always sounded like, and almost every tool in the market does some core business and then extends that to some other things. And then to me, it's a trap to use Terraform for what it really isn't. And it's not really a tool that deploys applications, let's say, or configures them and stuff like that, even though I know that people use it. To me, that would be a wrong path, personally.
Just because it feels wrong, or?
It's not really what it's designed for.
Well, yeah, I don't know. So the way I was using it, the way I used it, I agree, I understand. I mean, the Helm provider is not very good, which doesn't make it a brilliant experience. The Kubernetes provider is really good and really works well. I think for me, what was very useful about it was the fact that because it can resolve dependencies properly and create your ordering properly for you, it was really easy to say, I need this to happen, and then this to happen, and then this to happen, and then this to happen. Like JX Boot does, right? So JX Boot does the same thing. It says, I need this to happen, and then to wait for that to finish, and then this to happen, and wait for that to finish, and then do this. And to be honest, you can do exactly the same with Terraform, and that's what I found it very useful. I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying about, it's weird. It doesn't feel right to have it sort of reaching inside the cluster to do things, as well as hitting the APIs for the infrastructure.
Yeah, but where it could be very powerful if somebody's creating a preview environment, you might want to spin up like a cloud DB or something like that could be used as like its off cluster. And hooking that in and giving people the ability to be able to do that would be very powerful.
Yeah, no, that definitely. But in my head, that example is still infrastructure.
Yes, I agree. That's still infrastructure. Yeah. Yep. It's not. Yeah, it's when you get to creating namespaces or creating service accounts inside the cluster or actually installing Helm charts. It doesn't feel like it's what Terraform was created for. On the other hand, to be honest, based on my experience the last few days, I wish we just didn't have Helm at all and just use Terraform for everything. It's a considerably better tool. It works better, it's more reliable, it's easier to debug. And it does, because it does the ordering, it's really powerful to use.
Yeah, but it is in a way true, but on the other hand, it does not really, what you're suggesting does not remove Helm. So basically, whichever problems you have with Helm, you continue having them, except that you have a wrapper around.
So I would actually say just get rid of Helm entirely, and
That's
just use the Kubernetes provider directly from Terraform, because it does everything that Helm does, but better. So, it does templating, it does dependencies, it does all of those kind of things, right? And you can modify your resources and put them in. And so for me, I actually was like, I think this would be a better approach than Helm. I'm not suggesting we do that. That's just a kind of a, random observation. But I was interested to see what other people thought.
The state management is very impressive.
Yes.
I found that very, very good. I think it manages that better than Helm does.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the ordering, right? So it doesn't, it doesn't we have this problem in Jenkins X. We need to install ingress, then cert manager, then other stuff. There's no way in Helm to do that at all, except say, run this command, then run this command, then run this command. In Terraform, you just say, I need this to be done before this bit starts. And, you can do that in 3 lines of configuration.
The interesting part that isn't obvious until you're like 6 months down the road with infrastructure and software is that when you tie them, you could use Terraform, right? But you can't couple your software and your infrastructure together, because there may be updates that you don't want to roll out by constantly rolling out software changes with your infrastructure. So there are life cycles to think about before doing these things, and it wasn't designed to roll out software with your infrastructure. It was designed to provision things in a way that you can control yourself. And if you do that, you just got to be mindful of the different life cycles that you have in your that you're managing. And the state is really good, but also you can get into problems with that also that you don't foresee when you first create your infrastructure and your software with it.
Yeah, but is that more of a structure problem? That that if you split the infrastructure creation out from the actual application management side of it,
it's all down to your setup. You have to tailor it to work well with what you want to try and get out of it. You can't just take someone's Terraform plan and just go, I'm just going to run that. Because after a month down the road, you realize that somebody else has made a change to it, maybe that doesn't satisfy your constraints.
So kind of what you're saying is it's not as good as creating reusable modules as Helm is.
It is to a certain extent. So if you module things up appropriately, then you can decide how you use those modules, is what I'd say. I mean, Gareth's got a lot of experience with it as well. It's not one solution fits all type of thing.
I would.
But that's the same problem with. Actually, the same answer can be applied to other things. Is that the problem we're having right now when we deploy some applications is that they are not sufficiently decoupled. Theoretically, we should aim towards, it doesn't matter whether really ingress comes first or cert manager first. They should all pick on each other eventually, which is, I understand, not the case. But it's, I think the solution is in better decoupling rather than searching for other tools to foster coupling. Sorry, Gareth, I interrupted.
I would say, yeah, it's worth trying to keep those parts separate. So separating out the infrastructure from the software that's running on them, because I know that certainly in past places we've been caught out by that quite significantly when you tie the two together. Pete, you're dead right. The Helm provider for Terraform isn't great. I don't even think it's properly idempotent. I'm not even sure if it's able to do that. So Terraform works best if like multiple runs will produce no changes if there are no changes to do that, depending on state. And obviously, like software can update itself and do other things. And if you have the two interacting with each other, you're going to get conflicts. Like GKE is even a bit of an issue if you've enabled things like auto upgrade and stuff like that. The original design for the Terraform module was that it would drop into an organization's sort of Terraform provisioning system, however they wanted to use it. So we deliberately kept state management out of it and tried to make it as kind of simple as possible, knowing that the people that create the infrastructure and the people that do the installation of JenkinsX are quite often two different teams of people. So that was they were the sort of constraints we were working with.
Okay, that was an interesting chat. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask? No.
We have some Google Summer of Code prospective students and mentors maybe on the call. If anyone would like to say anything about this topic, Terraform, Helm, if you have any questions on the direction the project is moving, or if you have any questions on GSoC, now is a great time. There are many, many members of the JenkinsX team here. This is a great time to ask questions if anyone has any. While you're maybe thinking about that, I will just very, very quickly speak about how the Google Summer of Code timeline has shifted a little bit. And I will try and share my screen again. Okay. We've passed the period where students can apply to the JenkinsX proposals for Google Summer of Code. And now what will be happening is the organizers and the mentors will be going over the students' proposals, and we'll be selecting students. We may very well reach out to certain students and do little interviews, speaking with them to find out more about them and their interests, their background, also how the project itself, different focuses we may have for the proposals that students have put forward. So that'll be going on for more than the next month. That timeline has been stretched a little bit. So on May 4th, students that are been chosen will be announced and will be paired with mentors. And then at that point, there's a community bonding period that goes on for again, more than a month or so, about a month until June 1st, where the prospective students will be bonding with their community. And these will be students that have been chosen. So they'll become much more engaged in the community, with the project, making PRs, understanding the context of the work more. And then on June 1st, GSoC itself starts. So that's great. We're very excited. We're looking forward to it. Does anyone have any questions on GSoC participating, either students or mentors, or just in general our involvement in the program? Okay.
Is there anybody on the call that's looking to take part?
we did have a mentor on the call, a prospective mentor. Does anyone, is this a question for me, Dave, about who from GSoC might be on the call?
Yeah.
I don't want to put anyone too much on the spot if they don't want to speak. So, but we are generally a friendly bunch, so no need to be shy.
Maybe next time.
Good. All right. Good office hours. I think we can wrap up unless someone has any questions or comments that they'd like to make. Great. Have a good week, you all, and stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.